Hey there everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to mix paint for your fluid paintings. For acrylic pouring, I'm using floetrol as my pouring medium. So I've strained this in just a little kitchen strainer to get out all the lumps. And then another handy thing is a kitchen scale. They only cost about $20. It's a really good investment if you want to do a lot of acrylic pouring. You know, cups and sticks, silicone if you're using that, and I just have a little squeeze bottle of water. It makes it handier. Okay, so today I'm going to be mixing paint for things like flip cups, dirty pours, ring pours, that kind of consistency, where it still flows, but it's kind of thick. Well, medium to thick. So the first thing you want to do is, if you've got a scale, turn it on. Oops, not unit, power. All right, so I've already got my cup and stick on there, so it's zeroed out. And then start out with your first color. So for me, that's going to be this burnt umber. Okay, so I'll just show you. Most of the paint that I'm using here is craft paint, which is thinner to begin with. I've got a couple different brands of craft paint. I also have some house paint that I've just put in this bottle. All paints are going to mix a little bit differently. So some are going to need a lot more floetrol to get them to the right consistency. Some will need a lot less. If you're using a high quality tube paint, they're much thicker. They're going to take a lot more floetrol and less paint. So your paint goes a lot farther. For a craft paint, it's a good rule of thumb to start out with 1 part paint to 1 part floetrol, or 1 part paint to 1.5, maybe even 2 parts floetrol, depending on what you're doing. So today I'm going to do 1 part paint to 1.5 parts of floetrol. So I want to end up with about 2 ounces of mixed paint. So I'm going to put about 3/4 of an ounce of this paint. Okay, so I've got 0.8 ounces of paint. And then I'm going to put in the floetrol till it gets up to about 2 ounces. There we go, 2 ounces. Again, if you're working with a really thick paint, don't put all the floetrol in right away. You put a little bit and mix it, and then a little bit more and mix it. But when you're working with a craft paint, you can pretty much dump it all right in at the start. And then you want to mix it up really well. Make sure that you're scraping the bottom of the cup with your stick so you don't have straight paint left in the bottom of the cup. Okay, so once you've got your paint and your floetrol fully mixed, you want to check it for its consistency and then thin it with water if it needs to be thinned, which most of the time it will. Okay, so here we go. Do you see how it sort of plops off the stick instead of flowing? Okay, there's a little bit of flow. The point is, this needs some water. It's too thick. It doesn't flow well enough. So I like having a squeeze bottle of water because you can add in just a little bit at a time. So I'm going to add in a little bit of water and stir it again. And then test that consistency again. In general, the thinner your paint is, the more it'll flow, but also the potential to get muddy faster. The thicker your paint is, the less chance it has of getting muddy, but also the less it will flow. And when you're using things like silicone or trying to get cells, Really thick paint doesn't get cells as easily as thinner paint. Okay, so do you see it's starting to flow? When I pick up the stick, it flows off, mostly in an unbroken stream. If you look at how it actually lands, do you see how it makes kind of a thick, like it makes a pile, it makes a mound on top of itself? So that's a relatively thick paint. And you may want that. You may want your paint this thick. I want my paint just a little bit thinner than this, because I want it to flow and be a little bit more reactive. So I'm going to add a little bit more water. Okay, so do you see how that it flows off of the stick more readily? And when it lands, it makes a smaller little pile. It still piles up, but it's a smaller, thinner pile. So that's the consistency I want. Okay, I'm not going to add my silicone oil yet, because before I add silicone, I'm going to do a painting without silicone. Floetrol is very reactive. It helps you get cells very easily, so you really don't need a lot of silicone. If you're using something like Elmer's glue as your base, you'll need more silicone to get cells. Something like Floetrol, you really don't need much. So I only add about a drop for every ounce or two of paint. So this 2-ounce cup, I'd only add 1 drop of silicone, and that'll be plenty. All right, let me mix you one more color, just so you can watch again, and then I think that should cover the basics of how you mix your paint for things like flip cups and dirty pours and ring pours and other things that involve medium thick paint. Okay, so new cup, new stick, and let's zero it out. Okay, so my next one is going to be this green, which is it's still a craft paint, but it's a thicker craft paint. So instead of adding 3/4 of an ounce, I'm going to add like 2/3 of an ounce. So 0.66. Okay, well, I accidentally added 3/4 of an ounce anyway. But with some paints, they're just thicker and you need more Floetrol to help them flow. So I'll take this one up to just a little bit past 2 ounces. There we go. And stir it up. Okay, that's pretty well mixed. Let's see how thick it is. Okay, so that's quite thick, even though it's about 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol. It flows a little bit. Okay, so there will be pockets where it flows better and parts where it just blops. The point is, we need some water. The more you do it, the better feel you'll get for how much water you need. But it never hurts to start with just a little amount and then stir it around and then see. And it takes a fair amount of stirring to get that water mixed all the way down to the bottom of your cup. You might think that your paint is exactly the right consistency, but down at the bottom, it's still too thick. Okay, so this is flowing much better. It's still a little thick. Sometimes it helps to get out the paint that you just mixed and say, now how thick was this one? Okay, so that one flows better. It's a little thinner. So for this one, we need a little more water to get it to match consistencies. Okay, can you see that? How it's flowing much more readily off of the stick. It's a thinner stream. It makes a smaller mound when it lands. So that is a good consistency. All right, thanks for watching me mix these paints. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Good luck on your fluid painting adventure.